November 20th, 2012. Bentonville, Arkansas. A mother sets her alarm, closes her eyes, and falls into the deep sleep of someone who has finally, after years of chaos and court dates and fear, found something that feels like peace. She has a modest home. She has good neighbors. She has 2 little girls sleeping safely in the next room. For the first time in a long time, life feels like it might actually be okay. She wakes up at 6:30 in the morning the same way she always does. Gets up. Stretches. Walks down the hallway to start the morning routine. Get the girls up. Get the oldest dressed for school. Make breakfast. Normal things. Ordinary things. The kind of things mothers do in every home on every street in every city in America. She pushes open the bedroom door. Her youngest daughter is in bed, still curled up and sleeping. The spot next to her is empty. She calls her daughter's name. Nothing. She checks the bathroom. Empty. She checks the living room, the kitchen, every single closet in the house. She goes outside and walks around the yard, around the property, up and down the block calling her name. She knocks on the neighbor's door. Nobody has seen her. 6 years old. Last seen sleeping in her own bed next to her baby sister. Gone. Within 10 minutes of police arriving on scene, officers will find her body in the vacant house 2 doors down. Within 6 days, they will arrest the man this family trusted more than almost anyone else in the world. The neighbor. The babysitter. The man both little girls called Uncle Zach. Her name was Jersey Bridgeman. She had just turned 6 years old 6 days before she died. Her favorite way of telling people she loved them was to say she loved them to the moon and back. She was sweet and joyful and always smiling, and she had already survived more in her short life than most adults will ever face. She survived one nightmare only to be taken by another. This is Cold Case Solved. If you believe every child deserves justice, hit that subscribe button right now before we go any further. Turn on your notifications so you never miss a case. And if this story moves you, drop a comment below with Jersey's name. Let's make sure she is never forgotten. To truly understand how Jersey Bridgeman died, you first have to understand what she survived before she ever came to Bentonville. Because her story doesn't begin on the morning her mother couldn't find her. It doesn't begin with a quiet neighborhood and a trusted neighbor and a door left unlocked in the middle of the night. It begins 354 days earlier, in a different town, in a different home, at the hands of the 2 people in the world who were supposed to protect her most. December 2nd, 2011. Rogers, Arkansas. A woman who was staying temporarily in the Bridgeman household is walking through the house when she passes by a bedroom door and hears something. Crying. Small, muffled, exhausted crying. The kind that tells you a child has been at it for a while. She opens the door. And she stops cold. 5-year-old Jersey Bridgeman is restrained to a dresser. A metal dog collar is wrapped around her small body. A chain runs from that collar to a piece of furniture. Jersey is sobbing. She is 5 years old and she is chained to a dresser inside her own home. The woman doesn't hesitate. She picks up the phone and calls police immediately. When Rogers Police Detective Larry Taylor arrives at the residence, he finds Jersey's father, 26-year-old David Bridgeman, and his wife, 29-year-old Jana Bridgeman, who also went by the name Jana Slinkard. David doesn't try to hide what he's done. He admits to restraining his daughter. His explanation is almost incomprehensible in its casualness. Jersey had been getting up at night and eating food without permission. He thought she might be sleepwalking. He and Jana had discussed buying a child safety gate to keep her in the bedroom, but they couldn't afford one because David wasn't working. Take a moment and really sit with that. A father admitted to wrapping a metal dog collar around his 5-year-old daughter and chaining her to furniture because she was getting up in the night and eating food. Not because she was violent. Not because she was a danger to herself or others. Because she was hungry. Because she was a child who woke up hungry in the night and walked to the kitchen to find something to eat, the way children have done since the beginning of time. And his solution was a chain. But what investigators would soon discover was that this wasn't an impulsive, desperate act. It wasn't a single terrible night where a man made an unforgivable decision. It was a system. It had been refined over time. It had been adjusted for efficiency. David had first cut a belt to go around Jersey's ankle. When Jersey managed to work herself free from that restraint, David added a lock. When Jersey told her father that the belt was hurting her leg, he didn't remove it. He didn't feel remorse. He didn't look at his child's face and reconsider. He moved the belt from her ankle to her waist. This wasn't a moment of lost control. This was calculated. This was deliberate. This was a father who looked at the problem of his hungry child and methodically engineered a solution that treated her like something less than human. When investigators from the Children's Advocacy Center sat down with Jersey to interview her, she was remarkably composed. Remarkable, because she was 5 years old and had been through something no child should ever experience. She told the investigators clearly and calmly exactly why she had been chained up. She had gotten up during the night and eaten some pies, cereal, and bread. Food that was in her own home. Food she wasn't allowed to touch. The charges came quickly. David Bridgeman was arrested and charged with permitting mistreatment of a minor, false imprisonment, and endangering the welfare of a child. Jana Bridgeman faced the same charges. Both were held in Benton County Jail. The case moved through the court system with unusual speed, and by June of 2012, both defendants accepted plea agreements. David Bridgeman was sentenced to 18 years in the Arkansas Department of Correction. Jana received 12 years for the charges against her, plus an additional 3 years for violating the terms of probation from a previous substance-related offense. Neither would be eligible for parole anytime soon. More importantly, Jersey was removed from their custody permanently. She was placed with her biological mother, Desiree Bridgeman, who had separated from David years earlier and had spent that time raising Jersey's younger sister, a toddler who had never lived in David's home, on her own. Now, for the first time, both girls would be together. Same roof. Same mother. Same home. Safe. In March of 2012, before the court proceedings against David and Jana had even concluded, Desiree made a decision that took courage. She packed up her daughters and made a fresh start. She moved to Bentonville, Arkansas, about 10 miles from Rogers, 10 miles from everything that had happened. The new address was 608 Southeast A Street. A modest house. A quiet neighborhood. A street where kids played outside and neighbors waved from their porches. Desiree worked shifts at the local Easy Mart convenience store to support her family. It wasn't glamorous work. The hours were unpredictable and sometimes stretched late into the night. But she showed up. She paid the bills. She kept the lights on and food on the table and her girls in clean clothes. Jersey enrolled in kindergarten at Sugar Creek Elementary School for the fall semester of 2012. And by every single account, Jersey Bridgeman was thriving. Her teachers described her as sweet, joyful, always smiling. She loved being a big sister with a fierce, tender protectiveness that seems almost too mature for a 5-year-old but made complete sense when you understood what she had already been through. She doted on her 2-year-old sibling. She made friends easily and quickly and genuinely. She had a favorite phrase that became something like her signature, the way she ended conversations and hugs and bedtime tuck-ins with the people she loved. "I love you to the moon and back." For the first time in her young life, things were good. The nightmare was over. The chain was gone. The cold bedroom floor was gone. The hunger was gone. There was a mother who loved her and a little sister who needed her and a school where teachers smiled when she walked in the room. The nightmare, it truly seemed, was finally over. It was not over. Next door to the Bridgeman home, at 702 Southeast A Street, lived a young married couple. Amanda Holly and her husband Zachary Dwayne Holly. Amanda and Desiree became close almost immediately after Desiree moved to the neighborhood. The kind of close that happens naturally when two women are both navigating the daily grind of raising small children and making ends meet and trying to build something stable out of whatever materials life has handed them. Amanda had a 4-year-old son from a previous relationship. The two families moved in and out of each other's homes constantly. The children played together. The adults shared meals. There was a warmth and ease to the friendship that felt like a gift. Zachary Holly was 27 years old in 2012. He worked at a local restaurant. He was present. He was sociable. He got along with the kids. He was the kind of neighbor that made a busy single mother feel like she had backup. He did have a criminal record. But when Desiree would have learned about it, there would have been nothing there to alarm her. 3 prior arrests. 1 for public intoxication. 2 for contempt of court. No violence. No history of harm toward women or children. No red flags. Nothing that would make a reasonable person think twice about allowing him around her daughters. Desiree's work schedule at the Easy Mart was unpredictable by nature. Evening shifts. Late nights. The store needed coverage at hours that didn't line up neatly with school pickup times and bedtime routines. She needed reliable childcare, and she needed it to be nearby and affordable, and Amanda and Zachary were right next door. They volunteered. They were given a key to the Bridgeman home for emergencies. Both of Desiree's daughters called Zachary Uncle Zach. They were comfortable around him the way children are comfortable around adults who have always been kind to them and given them no reason to feel anything else. Desiree trusted him the same way. And that trust, built carefully and genuinely over months of shared meals and borrowed cups of sugar and late-night favors, would cost Jersey Bridgeman her life. By November of 2012, the babysitting arrangement had become completely routine. When Desiree worked late, the girls went next door to the Holly house. Amanda and Zachary fed them dinner, played with them, let them watch television, put them in pajamas as the evening wore on. Sometimes the girls fell asleep there before Desiree got home. When she finished her shift and came home to a quiet house, she would simply walk next door, scoop up her daughters, carry them back home, and tuck them into their own beds. It was seamless. It was comfortable. It worked. November 19, 2012. A Monday evening. Desiree had a late shift at the Easy Mart. Before she left for work, she dropped Jersey and her younger daughter at the Holly house. She said goodbye to her girls, thanked Amanda and Zachary, and headed out to start her shift. It was a routine she had followed dozens of times. There was nothing about that evening that felt different. Nothing that made her pause at the door and look back a second longer than usual. Nothing that whispered to her that this was not a normal night. Jersey had just celebrated her 6th birthday 5 days earlier, on November 14th. She was in that particular kind of childhood sweetness, still young enough to believe completely in the safety of the adults around her, old enough to have real personality and humor and favorite things. She trusted Uncle Zach. She had known him for months. He had fed her dinner and watched cartoons with her and put her to bed and been nothing but kind. She had absolutely no reason not to trust him. The evening passed the way it always did. Amanda and Zachary fed the girls. Jersey played with Amanda's 4-year-old son. The toddler was supervised and happy. As the hours passed, both girls grew sleepy the way small children do, suddenly and completely. They were changed into their pajamas. They settled down and fell asleep, warm and fed and unbothered. Desiree finished her shift around 11 at night. She walked next door to collect her daughters. Amanda greeted her at the door. Zachary was there too. Both girls were sound asleep, exactly as Desiree had expected. She thanked them both, grateful as she always was for neighbors who made her life manageable. And here is where the night takes on a quality that would torment Jersey Bridgeman for the rest of her life. Her younger daughter was small enough to carry easily. But 6-year-old Jersey was heavier, especially in that deep, boneless sleep of childhood. Zachary offered to help. He reached down and picked Jersey up gently, the way someone does when they don't want to wake a sleeping child. He carried her out of his house, walked the short distance to the Bridgeman home, and placed her carefully in the bed she shared with her little sister. He tucked her in. This image, Zachary Holly carrying Jersey safely and gently to bed on the night she died, would be described by neighbors to reporters within days. It would be referenced by detectives in court documents. It would be replayed on local news broadcasts with a kind of awful irony that is almost impossible to sit with. Because this moment is the ultimate betrayal. The man who carried that little girl to her bed that night, who tucked her in with the gentleness of someone who cared about her, would come back through an unlocked door less than 2 hours later and take her life. Desiree put both her daughters to bed together. Jersey stirred slightly as her mother pulled the blanket over her, the way children do when they're on the edge of deep sleep. She opened her eyes just enough to find her mother's face. And she said the last words Desiree would ever hear from her. "I love you to the moon and back." Then she closed her eyes and went back to sleep. Desiree stood there for a moment in the doorway. Both her daughters were peaceful. Both were safe. She went to her own room, crawled into bed, and fell asleep almost immediately. She was exhausted from the shift. She had no reason to lie awake. Everything was fine. She had no idea her daughter had fewer than 7 hours to live. If you're still watching at this point, drop a comment right now with the words "I'm still here." Let's see who is truly following this story, because what comes next is the part that keeps investigators and parents and people who study human cruelty up at night. The timeline of what happened after Desiree fell asleep was reconstructed from several different sources. Zachary Holly's eventual confession. Surveillance footage from the Easy Mart. Cell phone records. The medical examiner's determination of time of death. When investigators laid all of those pieces side by side, they were able to build a picture of the night that is as precise as it is devastating. Sometime after midnight, somewhere between 12:30 and 1 in the morning, Zachary Dwayne Holly left his home at 702 Southeast A Street. He walked a short distance down the block. The side door of the Bridgeman home at 608 Southeast A Street was unlocked. He had a key anyway, given to him months earlier as part of the babysitting arrangement, a key that represented trust and neighborly goodwill. But he didn't need it that night. He walked in. The house was dark and completely silent. Desiree was asleep in her bedroom. Holly moved through the home quietly, the way someone moves when they know a space well, when they've been in it dozens of times and know which floorboards creak and where the furniture sits. He made his way to the bedroom where Jersey and her younger sister were sleeping. He approached the bed. He woke Jersey. What he said to her in that moment, we do not know. We don't know if she was confused or frightened or still mostly asleep, operating on the kind of blurry, trusting instinct that makes small children follow familiar adults without question in the middle of the night. She knew his face. She knew his voice. She called him Uncle Zach. If he told her something, perhaps that her mom needed her, perhaps that they were going somewhere, there was no reason in her 6-year-old understanding of the world to be afraid of him. Holly picked her up. He carried her out of the house. Her younger sister went on sleeping in the dark bedroom, undisturbed. Desiree did not wake up. No one saw them. The street was empty and quiet in the way streets are at 1 in the morning in a small residential neighborhood in November. Between the Bridgeman home and the Holly home sat a third house, 704 Southeast A Street. The property was vacant. It had been empty for some time. The back door didn't lock properly. Neighborhood children had been known to wander inside out of curiosity, the way kids do with any abandoned building, though there was nothing inside but empty rooms and old debris. Zachary Holly carried 6-year-old Jersey Bridgeman through the back door of that vacant house. He took her to a bedroom. What happened in that room is confirmed both by forensic evidence gathered at the scene and by Holly's own eventual admission to investigators. The medical examiner would later determine that Jersey Bridgeman died from asphyxiation. The specific details of what occurred in that bedroom are deeply disturbing, and they are not details that need to be repeated here to tell this story with the gravity and honesty it deserves. What matters, what has to be said, is this. Jersey fought. The evidence was clear and physical and unmistakable. She tried to save herself. She struggled against what was happening to her with everything her 6-year-old body had. She did not go quietly. She did not simply surrender. She fought. And then she was gone. Holly placed Jersey's small body in the closet of that empty bedroom. He closed the door. He walked out of the vacant house through the back door, the same way he came in. He walked back down the block to 702 Southeast A Street. He went inside his own home. His wife Amanda was asleep in their bedroom. She had no idea what her husband had just done. She had no idea that 2 doors down the street, in a closet in an empty house, the little girl she had fed dinner just hours ago was dead. But Zachary Holly was not finished. He was thinking clearly enough, in the aftermath of what he had just done, to think about the next morning. About what questions would be asked. About what answers he would need to have ready. At approximately 3:35 in the morning, surveillance cameras at the Easy Mart convenience store, the same store where Desiree Bridgeman worked her shifts, the same store whose parking lot sat just down the road from that quiet stretch of Southeast A Street, captured Zachary Holly walking through the front door. He purchased a bottle of Pepto-Bismol. When police questioned him in the coming days, he would explain it simply. He'd had an upset stomach. He couldn't sleep. He needed something for the nausea. He'd gone to the store in the middle of the night, bought what he needed, and gone back home to bed. The timestamp on that surveillance footage was not accidental. It placed him on camera. In public. In a location with witnesses and recorded evidence. At a time that was hours after Jersey's death. If anyone pressed him on his whereabouts that night, that footage existed. There was a receipt. There was a timestamp. There was a camera angle showing his face. See, he could say. I was sick. I went to the store. I went home. I went to bed. Holly returned to 702 Southeast A Street. He took the Pepto-Bismol. He climbed into bed next to Amanda. He went to sleep. 2 doors away, Desiree Bridgeman slept deeply in her own bedroom, exhausted from her shift, unaware that the world she'd been carefully building for her daughters had already been shattered. Unaware that the nightmare she thought was behind them had found them again in a form she never could have imagined. At 6:30 in the morning, Desiree woke up. Time to get the girls up. Get Jersey dressed for school. Start breakfast. The morning routine. She pushed back the covers, stood up, walked down the hallway. She pushed open the bedroom door. Her younger daughter was in the bed, still asleep, small and peaceful under the blanket. Jersey's spot was empty. Desiree said her name. No answer. She checked the bathroom. Empty. She went through every room in the house, calling Jersey's name, opening every door, checking every corner of every space. She went outside and walked around the property, looked up and down the street, called her name into the cold November morning. Nothing. She called her mother. Her voice was already shaking. I can't find Jersey, she said. Her mother suggested the usual hiding spots, under beds, inside closets, behind furniture, the places small children wedged themselves during games of hide and seek. Desiree had already checked all of them. Jersey was not in the house. Desiree looked up and saw Amanda Holly sitting on the front porch next door. She walked over quickly. Had she seen Jersey? Had Jersey wandered over there this morning? Amanda hadn't seen her. The 2 women began searching together, expanding the search, moving through the yard and around the neighboring properties. Still nothing. No Jersey. No trace of her. Not a sound. At 6:43 in the morning, Jersey Bridgeman called 911. "My daughter is missing," she told the dispatcher. Her voice was desperate and controlled at the same time, the way parents' voices get when fear and the need to be understood are fighting each other. "She's 6 years old. She was in bed next to her sister. Now she's gone." The dispatcher kept Desiree on the line while simultaneously alerting the Bentonville Police Department. Officers were dispatched immediately. In cases of missing children, the first hours are critical. Every minute that passes without information is a minute the trail grows colder. Within minutes, multiple patrol units arrived at 608 Southeast A Street. Officers conducted a systematic search of the Bridgeman home. Every room. Every closet. Every possible space where a small child could fit. Then the yard. Then the surrounding area. They fanned out into the neighborhood, checking adjacent properties, looking into parked cars, moving quickly and methodically. Desiree was crying. Her mother had arrived. The scene on the street was beginning to draw attention from neighbors who saw the police cars and came outside to see what had happened. Amanda Holly was visibly shaken. Zachary Holly emerged from their home and stood in the street watching the activity with everyone else. Officer Travis Nichols pushed the search perimeter further, moving through the neighborhood in widening circles, checking anything and everything. He was working his way along the block when he noticed something. The back door of the vacant house at 704 Southeast A Street, the property sitting between the Bridgeman home and the Holly home, was standing open. Nichols noted the location and alerted Officer Mike Henson. Together, they approached the property carefully. The back door frame showed signs of old damage consistent with forced entry at some point in the past, though the door itself appeared to have simply been left open, not forced recently. Nichols and Henson drew their weapons and entered the building. The interior was empty in the way abandoned houses are. Bare floors. Old trash and debris scattered across the rooms. The kind of stillness that sits in spaces where no one lives. They cleared the front rooms quickly, finding nothing. Then they moved toward the back of the house, toward the bedrooms. The first bedroom was empty. They moved to the second bedroom. There was a closet against the wall. The door was closed. Officer Henson stepped forward and opened the closet door. Jersey Bridgeman was on the floor. Henson and Nichols exited the building immediately and sealed the scene. This was no longer a missing child investigation. This was a homicide. A senior officer was tasked with walking back to the Bridgeman home and delivering the kind of news that splits a person's life permanently into the before and the after. Jersey's grandfather was asked to make a formal identification before her body was transported to the Arkansas State Crime Lab for examination. The confirmation came. Jersey was gone. Desiree collapsed. Amanda Holly was crying in the street. And Zachary Holly was standing right there among the neighbors watching it all unfold, watching the officers seal the scene, watching the tape go up, watching Desiree fall apart, standing there with a receipt from the Easy Mart in his pocket and a story about an upset stomach ready to go. The Bentonville Police Department moved fast. In a homicide involving a child, the pressure to identify a perpetrator is immediate and enormous. Detectives began canvassing the neighborhood within hours of Jersey's body being discovered. They spoke to every neighbor. They collected every piece of surveillance footage available in the area. They began pulling phone records. They photographed the scene in the vacant house with meticulous care, documenting every detail of the room, the closet, the evidence of what had occurred. The physical evidence at the scene told investigators that Jersey had not been brought there from somewhere else. She had been taken there from the Bridgeman home. The evidence also told investigators something deeply important about the nature of what had happened in that room, information that would be critical in building a case. Detectives began the process of establishing a timeline. They spoke to Desiree extensively about the previous evening. When she had dropped the girls at the Holly house. When she had returned from work. Who had been present? What she remembered about the end of the night, about carrying her daughters home, about putting them to bed. When she told investigators about Zachary Holly carrying Jersey to bed, about tucking her in, about the last thing Jersey said before she fell back asleep, detectives noted it carefully. They also noted something else. The surveillance footage from the Easy Mart, retrieved as part of the neighborhood canvass of any business with cameras in the area, showed Zachary Holly entering the store at 3:35 in the morning. 3:35 in the morning. Hours after the estimated time of death. Hours after the last time anyone in the Bridgeman home had seen Jersey alive. Hours after the moment Desiree had fallen asleep confident that her daughters were safe. Zachary Holly had been at that store at 3:35 in the morning. Investigators began building the picture. They compared Holly's stated account of his evening against the timeline they were constructing. They looked at the geography, the proximity of the Holly home to the Bridgeman home to the vacant house. They examined the entry points of the vacant property. They looked at what the forensic evidence from the scene told them about who had been in that room. Within days, the investigation had narrowed decisively. On November 26, 2012, 6 days after Jersey's body was found, Bentonville Police Department arrested Zachary Dwayne Holly. He was taken into custody and charged with capital murder, kidnapping, and rape. When investigators confronted Holly with the evidence they had assembled, including the physical evidence from the scene, the surveillance footage, the timeline built from cell records and witness accounts, and the details that could only be known by someone who had been in that vacant house that night, Holly eventually provided a confession. He admitted to entering the Bridgeman home in the early hours of November 20th. He admitted to taking Jersey. He admitted to carrying her into the vacant house next door. He admitted to what he had done to her in that room. He admitted to placing her body in the closet. The man who had fed her dinner. The man who had tucked her into her own bed with gentleness just hours before. The man both little girls called Uncle Zach. He confessed. The case against Zachary Holly proceeded through the Arkansas court system. Given the nature of the charges and the evidence, including his own confession, the physical evidence from the scene, the surveillance footage establishing his movements in the middle of the night, and the testimony of investigators who had reconstructed the timeline in precise detail, the outcome was not in significant doubt. Zachary Dwayne Holly was convicted of capital murder, kidnapping, and rape. He was sentenced to death. He sits on death row in Arkansas today, convicted of the kidnapping, rape, and murder of a 6-year-old girl who trusted him. Who called him Uncle Zach. Who had already survived being chained to a dresser by her own father and had finally found something that looked like a safe and ordinary childhood. She had been in Bentonville for less than a year. She had made friends and settled into school and been described by every teacher and adult who knew her as joyful and sweet and full of love. She had a little sister she adored and a mother who had fought to build a better life and a neighborhood that felt, for the first time, like something that could really be home. She had told her mother she loved her to the moon and back on the last night of her life. She was 6 years old. There is a particular cruelty in Jersey Bridgeman's story that goes beyond even the horror of what Zachary Holly did. It is the cruelty of timing. Of proximity. Of the fact that she had already been saved once. The system had worked, in its imperfect and too slow and not nearly soon enough way, but it had worked. Her father was in prison. Her mother had her. She was in school. She was thriving. The chain was gone. And then a man who lived 2 doors down and had a key to her house and knew her name and had held her while she slept and carried her to bed with gentleness found a door left unlocked in the night. Desiree Bridgeman has spoken publicly about her daughter in the years since. About the guilt that lives alongside grief when you are the mother of a murdered child, when you are the one who handed your daughter to the people you trusted, when the last image you have is of your child tucking herself back into sleep after saying I love you to the moon and back. About the way that phrase has become both the sharpest pain and the most necessary comfort of her life. Jersey deserved so much more than what she got. She deserved decades. She deserved the chance to grow up and be a teenager and fall in love and have her own children to tell that she loved them to the moon and back. She deserved every ordinary, unremarkable, gloriously boring day of a long life. She got 6 years and 6 days. There are conversations that come out of cases like Jersey's that are necessary and uncomfortable and that we tend to have and then set aside until the next time a story like this forces us back to them. Conversations about background checks for people who are given unsupervised access to children. About the way informal childcare arrangements, born out of economic necessity and genuine community trust, carry risks that don't get discussed in the same way formal arrangements do. About what neighbors do and don't know about each other. About the gap between a criminal record that contains nothing alarming and a person who is capable of something monstrous. Zachary Holly had no history of violence against children. He had no history of violence at all. By every external measure available to Jersey Bridgeman when she handed her daughters over to his care, he was a safe person. He was a friend's husband. He was a man her daughters already knew and liked and trusted. There was no warning. There was nothing she missed. This matters because one of the cruelest things that happens in the aftermath of crimes like this is the quiet, unspoken, sometimes spoken suggestion that a mother should have known. Should have seen something. Should have done something differently. And the truth of this case, the honest and uncomfortable truth, is that Jersey Bridgeman did nothing wrong. She made reasonable decisions based on the information she had. She trusted the people her daughters already trusted. She worked the hours she had to work to keep her family housed and fed and stable. She did everything right. And it was not enough. Because sometimes the monster is the person standing right next to you who has given you no reason to call them a monster, and the only thing standing between your child and what they are capable of is a locked door. That is not a comfortable thing to sit with. But it is the truth of Jersey Bridgeman's story. Zachary Holly will die in Arkansas state custody as a condemned man. The appeals process will play out as it does in every death penalty case, slowly and procedurally and over years. But the conviction stands. The sentence stands. The confession stands. And Jersey remains 6 years old, in a photograph that her mother keeps, with a smile that her teachers remembered, with a phrase about the moon that her family carries forward every single day. Cases like this one exist in the space between the big systemic conversations and the deeply personal ones. They exist in the space between what the law can do and what the law cannot undo. They exist in the space between what a child survived and what a child was ultimately unable to survive. Jersey Bridgeman survived a father who chained her to a dresser because she was hungry. She did not survive a neighbor who came through an unlocked door in the dark. She deserved better from this world. She deserved better from every adult who was supposed to be keeping her safe. And the very least we can do, the absolute minimum, is to say her name and refuse to let her story become another case file that gets closed and forgotten. Her name was Jersey Bridgeman. She was 6 years old. She loved her little sister to pieces. She told people she loved them to the moon and back. And she deserved the whole moon. If this story has stayed with you, and I believe it has, here is what I am asking you to do right now before you click away. Subscribe to Cold Case Solved if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell so you never miss when we cover another case like this one. Leave Jersey's name in the comments below. Just write her name. Let this comment section be a place where she is remembered by people who took the time to learn her story and refuse to look away. Share this video with someone who needs to know about Jersey Bridgeman. Because the more people who know her name, the more people who understand what happened to her and why it matters, the closer we get to a world that does better for the children still out there who need us to pay attention. Jersey Bridgeman. To the moon and back.